And the important point to start with, to kind of give a clarification before answering where you started, is that it's just something that some people think that it's not coming from my own past actions. You know, it's destiny. It's just meant to be. It's what God wants from me or something. And get kind of fatalistic. So, whereas looking at it as you are, that it's the karma, meaning the reaction to what we did in past lives, takes that sense away and focuses on what we need to focus on is what is the reaction to an action. So certainly the simplest way to redirect our destiny is by acting wisely in the present. You know, that should be the primary focus. In other words, we have total control over what we're doing in the present. Am I going to be helpful? Am I going to harm someone? Am I going to get angry, or am I going to control my anger? Am I going to be generous, or am I going to be stingy? So each of those decisions we make and how we act accordingly is guiding our karma one way or another. In terms of changing it, it can be changed somewhat, but unless you do extreme religious practices, which you'd have to really be a monk to do, you can't totally get rid of it. It's made better, which is called mitigated. So, for example, you use a criminal justice system. Someone commits a robbery, gets 10 years in jail as the sentence, but then he acts well in jail and he gets his sentence reduced to 5 years because of good behavior. Well, that's the idea of mitigation. He didn't face the full sentence, he didn't face the full consequences because his current behavior was good. But he still ended up in jail. So we lessen any negativity is coming to us by such things as helping others, going to the temple regularly. Those kinds of religious actions mitigate or lessen the negative karma that's coming toward us. My Guru gave a specific example. He said if someone was destined to lose their leg in this life due to their prarabdha karma, if they were living a very religious life, helping others, going to the temple, they might simply have their leg scratched. So the leg still got injured, but not as severely as it would have if they were a non-religious person totally and wrapped up in themselves and not helping others. So yes, through helping others, through religious actions, we lessen the bad karmas. And we always need to keep in mind that it's our creation, not coming from someone else. Good, thank you for that question. What I found is a lot of it has to do with how we label something, which may sound insignificant, but I found if a difficult situation comes up, and I call it a problem, or I say a big problem, what happens? Start to procrastinate on solving it. Oh, I've got a big problem. I don't want to face that today. Maybe tomorrow I'll face that. So, if it's just the next thing to do, then you're more impelled to do it now. It's just the next thing to do. Some things are easy, some things are difficult. So handling the consequences of being in a car accident are a bit difficult. But it's just the next thing to do. And we just do it as best we can, and we get through it. So, in taking that attitude, it kind of takes the negativity out of it. It's not negative, it's not positive, it's just the next thing to do. Might be easy, might be difficult. And we need to pay attention to opportunities of the next thing to do. Say, for example, someone was a particularly rebellious teenager and nasty to his parents when he was a teenager, and in older life regrets that. Regrets it a lot. That regret can be a preoccupation where he doesn't focus fully on the present. But life will bring you an opportunity to fix that. Not necessarily in the form of your parents, but in the form of someone who is there who needs your help. If you're preoccupied with the past, that you mistreated your parents, you'll miss the opportunity in the present to help someone else and adjust out in your own mind that feeling. So we want to be alert in the present moment and not preoccupied about past mistakes. We'll have a chance to fix it if we don't get preoccupied by them. So just taking it as the next thing to do. Some will be challenging and some will be easy, I think is the best way to deal with negativity. Yes?
How do we?
It should just be a couple of months. Should have some experience. You know, it's point I was making earlier today, we need long-term and short-term goals both. So the way I point that out is ask the question, what's the goal of Hinduism? What would the answer be? Anyone?
Becoming one with God.
Okay, becoming one with God. How much progress did you make toward that goal yesterday?
0.
No, you really don't know. The goal is so far in the future that you can't measure it. So you need two kinds of goals. The comparison is to retirement. You want to move to a certain city in Canada and retire next to a beautiful lake, say. That's your goal. So if I asked how much progress did you make toward that last month, to make progress, you'd have to have a savings plan, right? Well, we're saving $300 a month, every month. We figured out that'll be enough to, when we're age 68, to retire there. So you have two goals. One is you want to retire on this lake when you're age 68. The other is you need to save $300 a month in order to achieve that goal. So two kinds of goals are necessary and many types of approaches. Otherwise, you won't achieve the long-term goal. Likewise, with meditation, you want to achieve oneness with God, but you need something simpler. So, for example, in our type of meditation, there's a spiritual energy in the spine. So you learn how to feel that energy, and if you get upset, you learn how to go inside and feel that energy and become centered again. That's one of our practices that can take a few months to learn. So once you learn to do that, and you're able to do it reasonably well most of the time, that should give you a sense of accomplishment. Yes, this meditation is working for me. There's a tangible goal, and I'm achieving it. So that's the way we approach meditation. It needs these various tangible goals along the way. It's just like learning a musical instrument or learning a dance. You have to start with an easy series of movements, an easy dance, an easy musical song. And then you can move on. So likewise, you have to start with an easy goal in meditation and then go for more difficult ones over time. As the story illustrates, the man encountered the piglets in his normal life. So that's part of what we want to keep in mind, that the situations we end up in, with people, with animals in our normal life, we want to try and follow that man's example and reach out and be of help as we can. If we look at the whole world, or a whole country, and start to feel pain because of that, there's not much we can do. So we have to find satisfaction in what we're able to do and what naturally comes to us to be of help. If we want to help an entire country, we may have to become prime minister of the country or something. We can't do it as a simple citizen. But we have to find contentment in how we are able to help and do as much as we can within the time allotted. But the key is, what comes into our circle of influence, people and animals, to make sure we're doing what we can there. And if it's beyond our ability to influence it, then we have a certain compassion or sadness for it, but we don't let it totally upset us. Because it's not we don't have the ability to change it yet. Did that help at all?
Yeah, it is helpful, but I was looking whether it's meditation or karma yoga or some other, because the questions is, the belief and faith start becoming questioned, that can God be so cruel, or whether if somebody, whatever power, divine power is so nice, why he or she is doing this. Mm-hmm. So at that stage, whether the karma yoga, sankhya yoga, or some of our meditation practices could help that person to keep the composure and go on with life.
Well, a good understanding of philosophy is what we need. That's probably a little... We need to understand a few points of philosophy clearly. In other words, the world is not a place where everything is pleasant. The world is not a place where there's only joy. The world is not a place where when we get old we don't have pains and problems. The world is not supposed to be different than it is. It has joy, it has sorrow, things go well, things fail. That's the nature of the world. It's not supposed to be different than that. So to understand that philosophically and accept it is important. And then we went into problems where there's fighting in the Middle East between countries, between different sects of Islam are fighting with one another. Northern Ireland, we used to have the Catholics and the Protestants were fighting, so it can happen in any religion. Well, these are the result of what's happened before, the result of history. Interactions over centuries have led up to the present situation. So we can't get discouraged because the current situation is one of confrontation. It's the point it's at. But we can have hope. I look at Europe sometimes, particularly after 9/11, a lot of Hindus came to me and felt the world was falling apart. Things were really getting bad. And to me, they weren't. We weren't in the middle of World War II again. We don't have Germany on one side and Japan on the other side attacking us. This was simply a terrorist act of a very small group. But still it impressed the mind. And so the example I used was Europe. You have Europe, where the countries there, until after World War II, every 20 years or so, one of them would start fighting with another, right? That's what you did. France and Germany would have wars. Germany and England would have wars. It's been going on forever. After World War II, how many wars have there been? 0. What did they do? They formed the European Union. And now they're working to cooperate economically so that what benefits one country benefits all the countries. So instead of acquiring wealth through domination, they're acquiring wealth through cooperation. So why did that happen? Well, there was a change in consciousness, obviously. Big change in consciousness there. So that's encouraging, isn't it? To see countries that were constantly at war for century after century decide to cooperate. That war wasn't the way to achieve what they wanted. So I imagine that'll happen in other parts of the world too, but all the parts of the world aren't in the same point in their historical evolution. Some are way behind where others are. It's going to take them a while to catch up, but I don't see why, you go far enough in the future, we couldn't have a pretty peaceful planet if we work these things out as they come up and other parts of the world change as Europe has. So we kind of have to keep those two philosophical points in mind. The world's not supposed to be free of sorrow, pain, other problems. It doesn't say that in Hindu scripture. It says it's Maya. It's a place, where after pleasure you have pain, after joy you have sorrow. That they fluctuate. And that things will happen that seem cruel. And that humanity is evolving in different parts of the world at different rates. So if you have those points in mind, then when you see something, it doesn't disturb you as much. You don't kind of give up and question your basic philosophy. You just see it in the overall picture, and you don't want to be passive. But an individual can only do so much. We can't change all of Canada unless we're in a high place, unless we've taken a commitment to become a politician and become successful at it. Then we can make changes throughout Canada, but otherwise we can only influence a small part of Canada, and we have to be content with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Having the biggest challenge could be the idea that we shouldn't fail for one reason or another. And I remember something I read, some famous scientist was saying, he's trying to discover something, he's saying one more experiment that failed just shows me one more approach that doesn't work. So, he had to figure out everything that didn't work, and finally he would hopefully find the one that did. It was a process of elimination. So he was expecting failure in that case. Otherwise, we have to learn the lesson. Something goes wrong in our life. Doesn't work out as we expected. Either a small scale or a large scale. Either one. We need to give thought to, if the same situation comes around again, is there something I can do differently to get a success? We need to learn everything we can from it and try and create a strategy that next time around in the same situation we would act differently and therefore be successful. So learning the lesson is transforming a failure into a success. We've gotten everything we can from it. It's like children. You have to expect children to not do everything perfectly the first time, right? So, but with the parents' help, they learn what should be done in those situations, and then gradually incorporate that learning into their behavior, and therefore are successful, don't have problems. And if they're stubborn, then they'll keep repeating the same mistakes and the same failure. So it's those two things, that failure will happen. And for example, on our Yerevan Temple project, another word for failure is you run into an obstacle that seems insurmountable. So my guru is very good at handling things, and the teaching he gave is the bigger the project, the more obstacles you'll encounter. So if you don't think that way, then you're in trouble, because you probably will give up before you're successful. So the more grand the concept is, the more obstacles you'll encounter. For example, we run into a number of obstacles in our Yerevan Temple project. We're carving by hand a granite temple in India, mainly in Bangalore, shipping it to Hawaii. Then a different group of Silpis, stone carvers, is assembling. We've run into lots of obstacles. The biggest one was when the U.S. Embassy in Chennai stopped issuing visas, said no, they don't qualify for the visa. Visa law had not been changed, it was under discussion. Hadn't changed, and all of a sudden the embassy started rejecting all stone carvers. Obstacle. But we had to hire one of the best immigration attorneys in Washington, D.C. to help us sort the problem out. We went around and did some lobbying with key Congress people that represented Hawaii and got it all sorted out finally, and they started issuing visas again. But it was something we usually don't do, go to Washington, D.C. as monks. But we had to, no one else was stepping up to sort it out. So that's an example of a failure or an obstacle that we overcame by sorting out what kind of expertise we needed to bring in that we didn't have. So it gets asked at satsang, isn't Hinduism simply a way of life and not a religion? That's the question. I've been asked it, at least 10 times in satsangs. And I'm sure you've heard it too, being discussed. And so the article starts out with Swami Chidananda. He has a beautiful video on this subject, and gives the location on the web that he did a number of years ago. He's passed on, of course. He makes the point that all religions are ways of life. Christianity is a religion and it's a way of life. Buddhism is a religion and it's a way of life. A religion is how you live, and therefore it's a contradiction to say a religion is not a way of life. So, and then he goes on to explain where this came from. He says it came from the German scholars who mistranslated the word mata. Oh, mata is belief, opinion, creed. And Hinduism has many opinions, many beliefs, many creeds. It's not a religion of one creed. He goes on to say it has, in Vedanta, it has Shankaracharya, it has Ramanuja, Madhva, 3 creeds right there within Vedanta. And then you go over somewhere else and you get more creeds. So what they were trying to say is it doesn't have a creed. But when you translate the word mata as religion, they're saying it doesn't have a religion. It's not a religion. It's not a singular creed. That's where it comes from. And then that's been misunderstood to simply say, oh, it's a way of life. It's not a religion. But that's not the case. And then the article goes on to say, ideally, Hinduism is both a way of life and a religion, and even more. And then it talks about it should be a form of meditation, it should be a form of service, we should learn philosophy, practice devotion. It lists 5 components that should make up Hinduism in its fullness when it's properly understood and practiced. So that's what the article is about. It's a good article. And it's particularly helpful if someone asked that question. I was asked that question. We had a student gathering in Austin in April, and I was asked that question. I had about 20 questions I was asked, and that was one of them. So I gave the answer. They were happy to hear the answer. They said, oh, that makes sense. This is a silly statement. Swami Chidananda says it's an idiotic statement wrapped up in pleasant words, something like that. Sounds so good, but it's absolutely meaningless. Yes. Well, it's incorrect. They say no one has seen God. The scriptures are filled with examples of seeing God, and the one that I use in a number of presentations is the one of Ramakrishna and Vivekananda because it's so well known. The story is Swami Chidananda, when he graduated from university in Calcutta, was somewhat influenced by the British intellectual atmosphere in the university. Even though his family was devoutly Hindu, he was slightly skeptical and a bit intellectually prone to challenge people. So he was going around Calcutta asking the prominent Hindu leaders, "Sir, have you seen God?" And so he's asking that direct question. And no one gave him a direct answer until he met Ramakrishna. Ramakrishna said, "Yes, I have seen God. God is clearer to me than an apple in the palm of my hand. And furthermore, you too can see God." Everyone has the potential to see God, not just some people. Because we're all souls evolving in the same way. So what one soul can do, every soul can eventually do. So that's just one story. And you can look that story up. It's a very common story. So Hindus have seen God. Mystics of other religions have seen God and written about it. So it's not that unusual, it's not, there's lots of documented cases over thousands of years of people seeing God.
Sometimes I will say to him, oh, it's when you believe, then it gives you a sense that when you believe in the God, then you feel Him.
Mm-hmm.
Would I be correct in saying that?
Oh, yeah. Yes. You have to believe to feel. Feeling is the first experience from God. What does the feeling feel like? It feels like a spiritual energy or an uplifting sense. We go to the temple in one state of mind and I believe we're different, we're uplifted. The ceremony has uplifted us. That only happens if we feel or we're open. So, the classic not being open is there's a gesture. Usually it's some men in the back of the room, right? Kind of there because their wife forced them to come. And it's one thing to stand that way, but it's another to stand that way during the puja. That means I really don't believe in this at all. And I wish I was, playing golf or watching TV, watching sports on TV, or doing this or doing that. I'm here only because I had to come. Keep peace at home. So you have to feel, and to feel you have to be open. So the analogy I use is to a sponge. If you use a sponge to clean up some water, and then you want to put it in something else, it can't absorb it, right? You have to empty it first before you can put it in something else, and it will absorb. So the mind is the same way. If we go and we're filled with our professional problems, our domestic problems, our body is in the temple, but our mind is somewhere else, we won't feel anything. So the murti is made to look beautiful, to try and help us focus on the murti. That's why it looks so nice. We have smells. We have something to listen to. We can sing. All of that is designed to help us come out of our preoccupations and focus on the murti. And when the ceremony is going on, we should absorb something. We should feel something, and that's energy. And you can absorb energy, you can feel energy. The analogy I use is to going outside on a sunny day. You can close your eyes, and if I ask you, do you feel the sun's rays on your body? You'd say yes, right? Even though your eyes are closed, you can feel the sun's rays on your body. Well, spiritual rays are more subtle, but it's similar. The spiritual rays that the temple is generating, you can feel them, and they have a certain impact. They help purify the mind. It's like a mental bath. They can uplift you. You can leave the temple in a more creative state of mind than you went in. The answer to a problem you've been trying to solve for weeks might spontaneously come to you because you've been uplifted, so forth. So yes, the feeling nature is what's involved in Bhakti Yoga. We want to feel God's presence in the temple. That was a good question.
I guess one more, last question.
Hinduism believes each of us has an individual soul, and that's what reincarnates. And the soul is neither male nor female because it can be born in a male body or a female body. And if the soul is neither male nor female, that means God can't be male or female either. God's more advanced than the human soul. And inside the soul, if you go to the depth of the soul, through meditation, you would find what you're talking about, omnipresent consciousness.
So is it a consciousness that you consider as a God?
Well, that's one form of God, yes. That's how God and the soul are one. If you go inside the soul to that depth where there's omnipresent consciousness, how many omnipresent consciousnesses can there be? One, right? I mean, it's omnipresent. Yeah, there can't be more than one. If it's omnipresent, it's everywhere. So the same omnipresent consciousness is in all of us, but we're just not aware of it.
So even the physical body dies, the consciousness remains.
Yes.
And according to your previous karma and things, it takes a different body and things.
Eventually, yeah, depending on, it will get reborn. Depending on, well, it also depends on the state of mind in which you pass. That's why, as I was mentioning, you want to be very careful about what happens the last month of your life. You want to be uplifted. You want to be in a religious, positive state of mind. You don't want to be unconscious if you can avoid it, or be in extreme pain. So a good transition, meaning in a high positive state of mind, helps our next birth be a better one. So yeah, that's a Hindu point of view. It's not an allopathic consideration, our next birth.
So when we say that
To keep to the monistic viewpoint, the idea is if we go deep enough in our soul, we'll find that part of us which is the statement, Aham Brahmasmi. But we have to go inside to the essence of the soul, which most people aren't able to do. But it's there in everyone.
so it's complete.
It's right there, it's complete. You don't have to do anything for it to be true. It's just you're not experiencing that part of you. And that's what meditation is about, learning to experience the part of you that is already omnipresent, or that is already identical with God. That's the monistic concept. And it takes a few lifetimes. But we want to move toward it. We want short-term goals. We don't want that to be the only goal, otherwise we'll feel frustrated. We need intermediate goals so we feel we're making progress.
So we can